Let's get ready to rumble!
What's good, y'all? It's the real OG, and let me tell y'all something. I love me some beat-em-ups. And for those of y'all who subscribe to my channel, y'all probably know I love beat-em-ups, considering the gameplay videos I've made in the past. I just love going around town whipping some random strangers behind. Besides fighting games, beat-em-ups are one of my favorite genres of gaming, especially retro gaming. And no, there's a difference between fighting games and beat-em-up games. I'm also glad that now they're bringing back the beat-em-up genre. And why wouldn't they? There's been a lot of good beat-em-ups in the past, like Golden Axe, Violent Storm, TMNT, the list goes on. But above all the beat-em-ups, the two most popular ones that made the beat-em-up genre what it is are Final Fight and Streets of Rage. Now, for as long as I know, there's always been a debate on which brawler is better, Final Fight or Streets of Rage. Heck, some of it's still going on to this day. I've seen some videos about it on YouTube and read some comments about it on social media, and honestly, I feel that some of these videos and the comments that I see are just a teeny bit biased. I don't know, to me they just are. But in this video, I'm gonna give my thoughts on all 6 of these games, the Final Fight trilogy versus the Streets of Rage trilogy. I'm gonna take a look at 2 games at a time and give my opinion on which certain game is the superior beat-em-up against the opponent. And like I said, this ain't nothing technical, this ain't no documentary, conflict, argument, or clash between 2 factions. This is all just based on opinion, which is something that everyone is entitled to, whether the opinion is like everyone else's or not. So if you're the kind of person who's not used to an opinion that's different from yours, this might not be the video for you. You've been warned. So, without further ado,
Let's get ready to rumble! Round 1.
let's talk about Final Fight. I remember the first time playing this game in an arcade. It was a summer camp field trip I went 2 years back. Ever since I started playing this game, I fell in love with it, dog. I got addicted to it. I played this game the whole time I was in the arcade. Well, actually there was another game I played, but most of the time, I played Final Fight. There's a lot that I love about this game. The graphics, the sprites, the soundtracks. Now this game is where it's at. Here's another cool and funny thing about this game. If you're really close to losing a life in this subway train scene, or if you just don't feel like clean sweeping the rest of the enemies, you could just do this. You immediately move on to the next cutscene without getting rid of these bums. They just cease from existence. Now that's pretty funny, and pretty legit too. I mean, those bums are annoying as heck anyway, especially them knife dudes. The music's pretty good. I mean, it's not too groovy, but it is memorable. Even the ending theme is memorable. And the fact that there's a couple of bonus stages in this game, so you can get more points, now that's just icing on the cake if you ask me. Now, we talked about the positives about this game, but let's talk about, things that could have been better in this game. Weapons. Now, what would a beat-em-up / brawler game be without weapons? I mean, who doesn't love picking up an object and hitting somebody with it? Now, I like the weapons in the game. The only problem is that most of the time, you lose your weapon way too easily. I mean, just one hit and your weapon's already gone. It's stupid. I mean, what's the point of even having a weapon if it's gonna disappear that quickly once you drop it? Now, like I said earlier, this don't happen all the time, but most of the time. I mean, if they want the weapons to be limited, fine, but they shouldn't be that limited to a point that they automatically disappear once you drop it. At least have the weapon drop at least 3 times, then it can disappear. Another issue is them cheap behind enemies. I mean, you press the attack button, yet sometimes they're able to hit you first anyway. And eventually, you ain't got no choice but to use the special attack to break free from their cheap behind hits. Some of these enemies are so cheap that sometimes they don't even give you a chance to get up once you get knocked down. Especially these big apes and knife dudes. Especially them dang knife dudes. There are times you can lose a life real quickly because of these guys. But thank goodness for these unlimited continues. Now, this game ain't perfect, it's got some flaws, but this game is a perfect example of what a beat-em-up should look like, and the fact that Final Fight only got 2 flaws just shows how great it is, at least in my eyes. It's short, simple, but still a lot of fun. Final Fight may not be the first ever beat-em-up, but it proved that first don't always mean the best. It really connected to a lot of players, including myself, and honestly, this is the kind of game that I'll definitely be playing again and again. Now, let's talk about its rival, and that's Streets of Rage. Now, Streets of Rage is a good game too. A little difficult, but still pretty good. Unlike Final Fight, the playable characters in the game have a few more moves in their arsenal, besides the simple attack, jump, and special. You can even do team attacks in 2-player mode, which is pretty cool. I love them team attacks. Another cool thing about this game is the music. The music is banging, bruh. Not only is it memorable, it's so groovy I can't help but bob my head to the beat. Alright, so it's more moves, good music, and that's it. Like I said, I like the game, but that's all the positives I can think of about this game. But let's talk about the things that could have been better. The graphics are straight, but could have been better, and the sprites are a little small. I mean, don't get me wrong, there's some beat-em-ups that got small sprites, maybe even smaller than the ones in Streets of Rage 1. However, I prefer the larger sprites. The sound effects so I mean, just listen to how it sounds when you hit somebody. Let's say you can only hear the noise, but you can't see what's going on. I mean, honestly, does that sound like you hitting somebody? Or somebody hitting you? Also, I see that in every stage, there ain't no cutscenes in any of them. Meaning, in Streets of Rage 1, you don't walk off screen, it fades to black, and you enter into a new background. You remain in the same background throughout the entire stage. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. But eventually it gets a little boring beating up people in the same background the whole time. Let's see some new backgrounds, at least 2 or 3 in each stage. Another thing I see is that except for the players and the bosses, the enemies have no life bars. And yeah, I am aware that there are some games that have something similar to that. All I'm saying is it would be a little more helpful if the enemies did have life bars, so you'll know how much more damage you gotta do to them until you take them out. Especially the mini-bosses, like these annoying jumping Blaze clones. I mean, you just don't know how much damage you gotta do to these two to take them out before they take you out. And let's talk about the specials. So basically, none of the playable characters got a special attack. What all of them have as a special is calling the cops for backup, when there's too many enemies, or to just take out the boss. But the special is limited. In each level, you can only use it once, unless you lose a life. Well, almost each level. There are some levels where you can get a special so you can use it more than once. So basically, the game expects you to use the special wisely and not rely on it all the time. Alright, fair enough. Golden Axe does something similar. However, any game with playable characters who each got a special of their own I can use constantly, I'll definitely pick over a game with limited specials. Now, I ain't saying those kind of games ain't good, but being able to use a special constantly, unless your health is low, is much more helpful, especially when it comes to bosses. I mean, the final stage, you can't use the special, like, at all, due to the fact that you're inside a building. So throughout the entire stage, especially when you go against the mini-bosses, especially the final boss, you on your own. Speaking of bosses, in stage 6, you fight the same boss as before, only this time, there's 2 of them. I mean, come on. They couldn't find any time to be creative and just make another boss, instead of having us face the same one again? Heck, there ain't even a boss in stage 7. I mean, is that even a thing? If there are any beat-em-ups I don't know that have that, let me know in the comments section. And last, but certainly not least, logic exists in this game. As good as Streets of Rage is, I still think it needed a few improvements. Now, here's something that most people talk about. Yeah, the Final Fight game in Super Nintendo only has one player, where you play by yourself, which is still fun. Streets of Rage for Sega Genesis, on the other hand, has 2 players, where you can play with somebody. Now, a lot of people on YouTube and on social media would declare Streets of Rage as the victor, simply because it got 2 players. And in my mind, I'm like, okay. I don't know if that means the game is better. Well, at least not for me. I mean, they act like Final Fight ain't got no 2 players at all. I mean, haven't they heard of Final Fight Arcade, Final Fight Sega CD, or Final Fight Double Impact? To be honest, this ain't a console versus console thing. It's a which game in general is better thing. I know I might get criticism for this. Heck, I might even get a few dislikes. But I don't care. My opinion still stands. Now, Streets of Rage will always be my game. But for this round, I gotta give the win to Final Fight.
Round 2.
Final Fight 2. Honestly, there ain't much to talk about in this game, considering the fact that it's almost exactly like the first Final Fight. Does that mean that it's not good? Not really. There's just nothing really extraordinary or unique about it, because it's almost exactly like Final Fight 1. I mean, take the controls for example. They got the same old attack, jump, and special. That's it. No other moves. I mean, that Carlos guy. He's got a sword, but he don't use it. Except as a special. But that's it. I mean, why have a sword if you ain't even gonna use it most of the time? The music's okay. So are the graphics and animation. But not only is this game almost exactly like Final Fight 1, it also got one of the same issues as Final Fight 1. You pick up a weapon, get hit once, and the weapon's already gone. Really? So those developers haven't learned their lesson from the previous game? I also feel that the characters don't give as much damage to the enemies as they should, which is why some of these enemies take a while to kill. When I fought some of the bosses, including the final boss, I'm like, golly, is this dude ever gonna die? And when you knock the enemies off screen, you gotta wait for them to come back. The more time they spend off screen, the more time is wasted. And here's another thing that kinda annoys me. It starts off with beating the final boss. What? What the frick is this? You call this an ending? Oh, I get it. I see. You gotta play the harder modes to get the ending. Kinda like Golden Axe. Fair enough. There you go. Seriously? That's it? What the heck, dog? Well, what other mode are you talk? Oh, don't tell me. Really? You gotta beat the actual hard mode to get the whole ending? What is this? Turtles in Time? Come on, bruh. And this still ain't even the whole ending anyway. You gotta play the expert mode, which is the hardest to get the whole thing. And even that ain't much. All you get is a scene of guy heading back home from training, and this. Thank you for playing. You are a super player. Yay! Whatever, man. Like I said before, considering the fact that this game is almost identical to its predecessor, there's not much to talk about in it. It really didn't bring nothing new to the table. But despite that, and its other flaws, I thought the game was alright. And now its rival, Streets of Rage 2. Now let me tell y'all something. There ain't no words that can express how good, nostalgic, and legendary this game is. You know what I'm saying? I've been playing this junk since I was a kid. Played it a few times with my older brother, and a few times with my little brother. I played this game more times than I can count. What's great about this game is that it's a massive improvement of the first game, with bigger sprites and better graphics. It ain't perfect, but a lot of people would consider this the brawler of all brawlers. Are they right? Let's find out. Like I said before, the sprites and graphics are a lot better than the ones in the first game. Yeah, the sprites in Final Fight 2 are still a little bigger, but the ones in Streets of Rage 2 got more detail. They move a lot smoother, and when they're not moving, they're breathing. It's called an idle pose, or idle animation. The rest of the animation and background designs are good, and kinda like its predecessor, each character in this game got multiple moves in their arsenal, not just a simple attack, jump, and special. They got forward attacks, back attacks, single attacks, or in Axel's case, a single double attack, jump and stun attacks, multiple grab attacks, and unlike the first game, each character got two special attacks of their own they can use constantly, the stationary and forward special attacks. And the music? Woo! Now let me tell y'all something about the music, bruh. The music is what makes this game. Honestly, I don't know what this game would be like without the music. This is the best soundtrack ever in a video game. Don't believe me? Alright, here's some of my favorites. Bruh, this music is phenomenal, and I don't think there's ever a day that I don't hum to at least one of these beats. Like I said, Streets of Rage 2 has the best soundtrack ever, and I don't think any other soundtrack can top it, you feel me? Now, let's talk about the things that could have been better. As we all know, the boss of Stage 3 in the game is someone named Zamza, who looks like a monster, but according to research, he's actually a ninja in armor. But there's also another Zamza named Sauder, who's the boss of Stage 6 alongside Jet. So just like the first game, they couldn't just create another boss for this stage. Come on, man. At least Final Fight 2 took the time to be original for each stage. And another thing, here's what happens when Skate throws an enemy. And here's what happens when Skate accidentally throws one of his partners. I don't get it. But overall, despite those only two flaws, this game is where it's at, y'all. It's not only a big improvement to the series, but to the entire beat-em-up genre, with its impressive design, awesome gameplay, and some kick-behind music, including this classic right here. Now this is the theme that lifts your spirit up. It's the theme of pure accomplishment. It's a beautiful and relaxing way of telling the player, well done. This is the definition of a beat 'em up. If anyone asks you what a beat 'em up is, just say Streets of Rage 2. They'll figure it out. A lot of people would pick this game as one of their top favorites, and you know what? They might be right for doing that. So, the winner of this round is Final Fight 2.
What? Gotcha!
I had to, man. I just had to. Anyway, the real winner is good old Streets of Rage 2.
Final round!
Woo, this is going to be a tough one. Let's start off with Final Fight 3. Okay, there's no other way to say this. This game is whack. I'm sorry, it's just whack. Almost everything about it is whack. The graphics are whack, the sound effects are whack, the way the characters fall on the ground is whack. I can't think of any other word to describe this game but whack. But let's not rush into stuff. Let's get to the positives first. I see that the animation has improved. Instead of just standing still, each character got an idle pose, or idle animation. They breathe while they're in their fighting stance. Another improvement is that all the characters are able to run. Not only run, but they all got attacks to go with their run. They can also do super moves. Okay. The backgrounds are pretty nice, I'll give it that. And the fact that this game has a computer player is pretty impressive. If you want to play in 2-player mode, but don't have anybody to play along with you, you can have the computer be player 2. Alright, that's cool. The music is pretty catchy, but not very groovy. Well, except for one. And that's how Sunrise was born. Now the errors of this game. Some of the animation may have improved, but the graphics alone are just choppy. All of it's just choppy. As I said before, the sound effects are pretty whack. I mean, just listen to how they sound when they attack.
Sometimes I can barely hear them. I can barely even hear some of the hit effects. Even the way the characters hit the ground when they fall sounds off. In the previous games, even though you can hardly hear it sometimes, at least it actually sounds like the characters hit the ground. In this game, it sounds like a pile of rocks hitting the ground. Some of the attacks are pretty whack too. Now, this might not be a big deal to everybody, and it might seem like I'm overreacting, but I gotta be honest. I hate the throws. I hate the way Guy and Lucia throw the enemies. I'm sorry, I just can't stand how these so-called judo throws are performed. I mean, at first it looks like you're about to flip them, but in the end, you don't. You just throw them like this. Why? The previous games didn't have a problem with the characters throwing the enemies the proper way, so I don't know what was wrong with this one. Maybe it was either a programming glitch, or the developers were just being lazy. I don't know. But anyway, I just can't stand those throws, dog. I just can't stand them.
And another thing, just like the second game, you gotta beat the hardest, or how they would call it, expert mode to get the whole ending. But the ending isn't even that much anyway. Just a couple cutscenes and some dialogue. There's actually multiple endings in this game, but it's all basically the same thing. The only differences are the music, dialogue, and whoever's standing on the right side talking to Dean.
I'm sorry, but despite the positives of this game, Final Fight 3 is just not that interesting. To me, there just wasn't enough effort put in this game. I mean, I tried playing it once, and I couldn't even get through the second level because of how whack it is. I didn't even know how to do the super moves. Like I said, the game is whack, and I honestly don't plan on playing it again anytime soon.
And now, the last game. Final Fight 3's opponent, Streets of Rage 3. Honestly, this is my least favorite game in the series. I mean, the game's not terrible, it's just hard. Ridiculously hard. But just like the rest of the games, let's get to the positive side first. Now, the 3 characters from the last game come back with some new moves. Remember in the last game, Escape was the only one who can run? Now all the characters can run. And just like Final Fight 3, they also got attacks to go with their running. But there's a lot more to it than that. Each character's running attack can have an upgrade, depending on how many stars you got. The most stars you can get is 3, so this is your regular running attack. But when you get 3 stars, it upgrades to this. And to add icing on the cake, 3 of these characters can do a running attack with certain weapons they use. And y'all know I love fighting with weapons, you know what I'm saying? So the fact that you could do some sweet running attacks with the weapons is pretty tight. The graphics are pretty good too. I mean, yeah, they're the same as the second game, but they still look good. At least they're still smooth and not choppy like Final Fight 3. Also, just like in Streets of Rage 1, you can do some team attacks in 2-player mode. I've always liked doing that, which makes me wonder why they didn't have that in Streets of Rage 2. Another good thing is playing the cool Dr. Zan. Alright, now let's talk about the issues about this game. One thing is the unfair difficulty. Like I said before, Streets of Rage 3 is ridiculously hard, for all the wrong reasons. The enemies are overpowered, some of the bosses and enemies got an unnecessary amount of health bars, and some enemies can give more damage than they actually should. I mean, I don't mind a challenge, but this is ridiculous, bruh. They clearly took things way out of proportion in this game. Some of the sound effects are pretty whack too, especially the hit effects. I mean, honestly, does this sound like you hitting somebody? The music is mediocre at best, which is quite disappointing since the music is the best part of the whole Streets of Rage series, so it's kind of a letdown that the third game failed to provide a good soundtrack. I mean, there's a reason why this soundtrack ain't in Streets of Rage 4. It may have been memorable, but not very enjoyable. Well, except for one. Another thing, just like part 1, logic exists. Why? Just like Streets of Rage 1, you can't throw Big Ben because of his size. I mean, yeah, I understand the real world that it ain't always possible for somebody smaller to lift and throw somebody bigger. But come on, man, it's a dang game. And there's an old saying, sometimes you gotta sacrifice just a bit of logic to make a decent game, or movie, or TV show, story, whatever. For example, we all know there ain't no way somebody can get shot, fall down, and get right back up
and walk around like nothing happened. That ain't logic, but it happens in the game. The same should apply for throwing Big Ben.
Oh well, at least Skeg could still throw him.
Another thing is when you play the easy mode, you stop by stage 5, and the game encourages you to play the harder modes in its own original way. But here's the unfair thing about this. It's the final boss of a game. Now, the final boss ain't really hard to beat, but he's hard to beat in 3 minutes. How the frick you supposed to beat this guy in 3 minutes, considering the fact that he's got multiple life bars? I mean, you can barely even touch this guy because he moves around too much. He can also give one little hit, and that's enough to knock your behind down. Not only knock you down, but slow you down while the clock is ticking. So, unless you're a Streets of Rage playing maniac, it is dang near impossible to beat this boss in a little amount of time. And if you don't beat him in time, all them bombs Mr. X's minions planted all over the city explode. The city's destroyed, and you get the bad ending.
There's also another ending in this game. If you fail to save the chief of police in Stage 6, Stage 7 will be at the City Hall, where you fight Shiva again as the final boss. After you beat him, all you get is this. You don't know where Mr. X at, and that's it. So if you want the real ending, you gotta beat the real final boss under 3 minutes.
Now, I know what y'all thinking, and yeah, I know there's a Japanese version of this game called Bare Knuckle 3, where you can beat the whole game in easy mode. You still gotta beat the boss in 3 minutes, but in the Japanese version, the boss got fewer life bars, which is very helpful. So yeah, compared to the US version, the Japanese version is definitely the better and fairer version. But this ain't Final Fight 3 versus Bare Knuckle 3, it's Final Fight 3 versus Streets of Rage 3. And clearly, Streets of Rage 3 got a lot of flaws.
Like this.
Why am I the only one getting electrocuted?
But after everything I pointed out, I don't think this game could possibly get any worse.
Wait a minute! The enemies take your health? Are you for real? Nah, man. No. Heck no. Absolutely not. Unacceptable. Enemies picking up weapons is one thing, but taking health? Nah, man. No. That's completely uncalled for. Even Final Fight 3 wouldn't go this low. Whoever thought this was a good idea, shame on you. Shame. Now, I know y'all are still expecting to see a winner in this round. Like I said, it's gonna be hard, but I gotta make a decision. So, here's the winner. It's a tie. They both lose.
I'm sorry, but these games just didn't really improve much over their predecessors. Does that make them bad? Well, no. I mean, they both had some decent stuff, and if y'all like Final Fight 3 or Streets of Rage 3, or both, that's fine. They just weren't enough to impress me though, you know what I'm saying? But I'ma still give credit where it's due. These games might be mediocre at best, but they're still part of their trilogies. They're still part of the games that strongly define the beat 'em up genre. They're still part of the games that are the most popular brawlers in the genre.
After giving my thoughts on all 6 of these games, here's what I think. Out of all 3 of the Final Fight games, the first Final Fight is the best. And out of all 3 of the Streets of Rage games, Streets of Rage 2 is the best. In my opinion, Final Fight and Streets of Rage 2 are the 2 best brawlers in the entire beat 'em up genre. They're both memorable, enjoyable, and they're both the type of games that the real OG will never get bored of playing over and over and over again.
But anyway, this is all just my opinion. Now, I know a lot of people might disagree with me on this video in a technical way, and that's okay. Like I said in the beginning, this is all just based on opinion, which is something everyone is entitled to, whether it's popular or not. But what do y'all think? Let me know in the comments section. If you like this video, feel free to leave a like and share with your friends. If you're new to this channel, feel free to subscribe and watch my other videos. I'll be forever grateful for that. I'm the Real OG. Thanks for watching, y'all. Peace.